Principal.
Do it live.
We always do it live. Ladies,
It's alive! It's alive!
And Gary, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the quarantine panels on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. We took a couple of weeks, or in 2020 time, that's 7 years since Dragon Con from doing our usual Thursday night things, and we decided we're just going to keep doing them because
they can't stop us.
They can't stop us. This, and by they, we of course mean the Illuminati. And
I meant the German medical boards.
Both. It's the same thing. But what we're going to do tonight, since it's the most magical and special time of the year, and by that I mean, of course, Halloween, we're gonna talk about horror movie things and that kind of stuff, starting tonight with our favorite Frankensteins. But I'm not doing this by myself because that would be crazy. I've brought along another gaggle of classic track irregulars, all of whom you guys have seen in live action on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track, but some of them are making their debut now in virtual form. Speaking of virtual forms, Gary Mitchel, my co-director. How are you?
Yes. It is a pleasure and an honor to be back. I believe we have recovered from virtual Dragon Con, much like we always have to recover from regular Dragon Con. And I am looking forward to this month of my favorite genre, horror.
It's like everyone used to joke about con crud. Ha ha, con crud after Dragon Con. Now the whole planet has it. So that's Gary Mitchel, my co-director. 2 internets away from me, Miss Beth Van Dusen. How are you?
Hi, or as I will be known tonight, Miss Abby Normal.
Perfectly.
But normally I am Beth Van Dusen. I am a co-host of Execute Chapter 66, which is a podcast about Star Wars books. So for all your nerdy needs, tune in to needlessthingspodcast.com and listen to dorks talk about Star Wars.
Perfect.
I highly recommend the podcast. It's my favorite Star Wars podcast.
Thanks, Gary. Much better endorsement this time.
You're welcome.
1, 2, 3 internets away from me, all the way down in the Florida hot zone, Mr. Mike Ensley.
Hello, I'm Mike Ensley, director and founder of Pensacon here in Pensacola, Florida. A big little convention, I think is what we call it now. We have about 35,000 people now, so it's getting up there. And also the host of Nightmare Theater, which is now airing in 9 different PBS markets throughout the Southeast in Florida and Tennessee. It's a old-fashioned horror host show in which I am the Baron Mondo Von Doren, a middle management demon who foists bad movies upon people in the material plane with my luchador sidekick and our pet werewolf. And actually that show is going to expand coming up on Halloween. We had our next market, which will be Gainesville, Florida. The public TV station there has picked us up starting on Halloween. So that'll make 10 markets we'll be in. And hopefully we'll come to Alabama and Georgia and other places very soon.
Come on.
Yeah, we're trying.
That's so great. But we, of course, links to all of our things will be in the show notes after we do this thing live. But next, 1, 2, 3, 4 internets away from me, General Tank, Mr. Sherman, how are you?
I am doing better than the last time you saw me. So, yeah.
Okay.
I have been out with the... Yes.
But you're what?
I'm a lifelong fan of science and science fiction. I'm better now. I'm doing much better now. I took my medicine, so I'm doing much better now.
And the bolts in your neck, they're attuned to properly to...
Sure, why not?
We're going to keep going. All right, ladies and gentlemen. lastly but not leastly, Noel, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I am Noel Wood. I am the owner of dorkdroppings.com, the infrequently updated dorkdroppings.com, but it's a website older than Google. I am also the co-host of the Audible Interlude podcast on the Needless Things Network.
I laugh every time you say the name of the website.
Yeah, and it's a podcast about what, Noel, for people who might not know?
It's about the world of G.I. Joe, a real American hero, and other variations of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I just have to show off.
Oh, you got one.
What?
Oh,
I am.
I had to go to the eBay, but I got it.
Y'all keep talking. I'm going to go over here and stew in my own jealousy.
Yes.
But we'll do that. I'll table that jealousy for a moment, because tonight we are talking about Frankenstein's monster, technically. But let's argue about that for 20 minutes, and then we'll talk about the whole Frankenstein business. So everybody, I think everybody in general has a favorite Frankenstein. And so I thought that we would go around the horn, and because Frankenstein has been around literally, in fact, many people, let's say everybody, says that Frankenstein, the novel, started the whole science fiction thing. I think there's a very strong case for that. And so let's start with your favorite Frankensteins, Gary Mitchel.
Well, I mean, no one less than Asimov himself says it's the first science fiction story, and I will not argue with Asimov. But if I get to go first, that means I get to claim one before everybody else does. But I'm not going to go with the obvious. Although, since I'm going to assume we're discussing strictly Adam, although my phone picture, you can see I like the lady, the bride, as they call her, and I think I know who Beth's first one is going to be, so I'm going to leave her alone.
Oh.
And I will go with probably an odd pick for a lot of people, and I'm going to go with Glenn Strange's version from Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Oh, nice.
Thank you. He is the second best looking of the Universal version of Frankenstein. You know, no one tops Karloff. Karloff is the original. He's the template. Everybody's based off Karloff. But Glenn Strange has this great cadaverous look that I don't think anybody else, aside from Karloff, matched. Everybody else, they were relying a bit too much heavily on the makeup, I think. And I just love his performance in that movie because it's one of the first horror comedies. It's a horror comedy that works both as horror and a comedy. And partly it is due to his performance. He does the very well. He plays off Bud and Lou very well. And like I said, I just love his take on the Universal look. So he's my first pick.
Believe it or not, I saw Abbott and Costello versus Frankenstein, or Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, before I saw actual Frankenstein. So when they were making fun of the original Frankenstein movie, I was like, okay, this is... But then when I saw the actual Frankenstein, I went, oh! Now I see. But yeah, that is one of my favorites. That might be my favorite of the Abbott and Costellos because of just and it wasn't just Frankenstein, but all the Universal guys were in that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, Cheney and Lugosi and the whole crew.
See, yeah, that's like a cross.
It's the Avengers of Universal monster movies.
Thank you. They were doing it 80 years early. So let's go now to a brain that we found in on a shelf somewhere that we accidentally grabbed. Beth, your choice.
You know what? I'm going to screw you guys up because my name gave it away too much. So I'm going to throw in a quick one, a real short one that we don't have to get into a lot of discussion of because it speaks for itself. Phil Hartman as Frankenstein in Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
Stole mine.
oh man!
Sorry, Noel.
It was
The
bound to
song-
happen.
The songs that they sang, especially their Christmas carols, when it was Frankenstein, Tarzan, and Tonto.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
good. And it wasn't even a whole lot of acting, and it wasn't even that it was great makeup, but it's all so good.
and Phil Hartman is great in everything.
Whenever.
Yeah, but the fact that this was a 70-year-old joke, even when he did it, and it was still great. It was spot on. Loved it. So we let's. Do you have an? Well, we're going to come back around to everybody. So, Mike.
I'm going to go with a little more obscure one. I'm going to go with the monster from Frankenstein and the monster from Hell, portrayed by the great David Prowse, who is, of course, went on later to play a guy named Darth Vader. But that monster is bizarre. It looks like a half gorilla, half ogre, half orc kind of a thing. It's got the brain sewn on. It's a really creepy, nasty looking monster. It's one of my favorites of the whole thing. And Dave does a really good job. Even though he doesn't speak, he actually uses his eyes and does a lot. He had a lot of roles where he didn't really speak. Dave did. But yeah, in that one, he uses his eyes, he uses his expressions. He's very, very good. And of course, that one ends with the monster getting a good brain. So it's a really interesting kind of take on the whole thing. So that's the one I'm going to pick because I think that's a movie that's critically underrated and not often seen, but should be seen.
Is Peter Cushing in that too? He's
Yes,
not.
he is Dr. Frankenstein. He's sent to an insane asylum, and it also has one of my favorite Hammer beauties. Madeline Smith is in that one as well. So it's a really fun movie, really entertaining to see.
It is now streaming on, I believe, either the Hulu or the Amazon Primes. I saw it when I was flipping past things a couple of days ago, and I saved it to come back and watch later. So it's available right now. And when I say right now, I mean not at this moment. Everybody hang out with us. Watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody leave to go watch these movies until we're done.
No. Next up, Sherman. Mr. Sherman.
My favorite, my favorite. So I don't go with the obvious. Is going to be the monster from Van Helsing from 2004.
Oh, good pick.
Ooh.
Continue.
That was the monster. The monster was closer to the portrayal in the novel, and Stephen Sommer was doing a shared universe, a dark universe, before Kurtzman came along and messed it up for Universal anyway. So for that, he gets my vote as my favorite. So,
and the guy, if I'm not mistaken, the guy who played Frankenstein in Van Helsing, or Frankenstein's monster in Van Helsing, also played him on Broadway in Young Frankenstein. So, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
And so, Noel.
Hey, so I'm going to probably go a little Frankenstein adjacent for a lot of stuff tonight because there's been tons of pop culture inspired by Frankenstein. My first pick is from the first episode of the second season of the Transformers cartoon. This is an episode called Autobot Spike, where Spike gets hurt. Spike, of course, is the human companion of the Autobots on Earth. He gets hurt, and they put his body into a hodgepodge of damaged Transformer parts. And while he's sitting here recovering, they just happen to have a TV on where Frankenstein movies on. So of course he believes he's Frankenstein, and Megatron tries to take control of him to have him destroy the Autobots.
Sure.
So
like you do. I mean, that's the obvious thing to do.
Yeah.
Shockingly, I've never seen this, so
we're gonna take
You don't know what you're missing out on.
seriously. So the Autobots said we're going to take our little human friend and totally and just make him one of us. It'll all work out.
Yes,
I guess
there's a lot of good homage to Frankenstein stories in the episode too.
Yeah,
Oh, that's so good.
and I guess that answers the age-old question of what happens if a human's inside a transformer when they transform.
There's a lot of other media, especially about Transformers, where that gets a little crazy.
Once again, a lot of
Spindle, fold, and mutilate.
questions. I got a lot of questions. So it's back around to me, and I'm very glad that it came to me before anyone stole this one from me, and that is Frankenberry.
Yay!
And he's only on my phone because I couldn't find him in the grocery store today.
Aww.
Everybody gets Frankenberry apparently in Alabama town. They're all into Frankenberry, and meanwhile, lonely old Blueberry is sitting on the shelf. There's like 78 boxes of Blueberry, and all the Frankenberry.
Nobody wants Blueberry.
It's ridiculous.
hey, you shut your mouth.
I did pick up 2 boxes of Count Chocula at Target today because they were 2 for $7.
Son of a... I'm so jealous. Yeah. I will check back because I gotta get me some Frankenberry. Lola in the comments, our good buddy says the cereal doesn't taste as good as it did when I was a kid. Incorrect, Lola. Frankenberry is delicious. So let's go back around to Gary Mitchell.
All right, so for my second pick, I'm tempted to go with Karloff just because no one else has picked him yet. But since I did a Karloff knockoff, I will instead go with a different take. And I am going to go a little strange as well. And I'm going to go with Frankenweenie. I prefer the original short over the expanded movie. But there's just something about Tim Burton doing Dr. Frankenstein as like a 10-year-old kid who brings his dog back to life. Because who hasn't, as a child, had that trauma of losing a pet and wanting to bring it back? And the dog's just adorable.
Ooh.
I agree. You can kill any number of people in any movie you want, but once an animal dies, I'm destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, what kind of doggy snuff flick is this? Once they start killing pets. Well, I mean, it turns out fine in John Wick, but
Does it really? A lot of people
paid the price for as they should have. But yeah, we were last year. I saw Frankenweenie for the first time. I think I saw the big budget Tim Burton feature film version that they did. I think it was on Freeform's 31 Nights of Halloween thing, and it's something. It's Tim Burton-y to the extreme, and that is a compliment. Beth.
Okay, now we'll go ahead and get my obvious pick out of the way. And if we're just talking about the monster, Young Frankenstein still wins because Peter Boyle is so good in that movie. If for nothing else than the scene with him, with the priest, the blind priest who keeps trying to pour him soup and sets him on fire and dumps hot soup. And he's just like, Peter Boyle gives the best performance without saying a word.
Yes.
Even though the rest of that movie is hysterical and everything about it is amazing.
Everything.
Peter Boyle.
I think this is the one that everyone wanted to pick, but we were all afraid that someone would beat us to it.
Yeah.
Hey,
So-
I made it my second pick.
Yeah.
Y'all just were nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the-
We were
and-
all like, "Oh, we'll let somebody else do it," but I hope they don't. And I'm glad you did it.
Yeah, and I think it's like the Mary Shelley Society, whatever the official Mary Shelley Frankenstein organization, whatever it is, actually called Young Frankenstein the most faithful adaptation of the book that's been done.
But there are so many. Gene Wilder is the best Dr. Frankenstein.
I will not be angry.
He is so. The thing is, he's not Gene Wildery in this. He's crazy, and that's wonderful. The stuff with him and Igor, Gold, just everything.
My favorite scene from Peter Boyle in that is when he's down by the water with the little girl, and he just looks at the camera like, we know what's going to happen. He's got to do it. So that's a great moment in that film.
There's so many. Really, we that's one we just got to do a whole panel on.
Yeah.
Because that's just the best. I think overall, I think that's my favorite Frankenstein anything. But let's go to Mike.
Well, I'm going to go with one that I know this is rare that something from the 80s comes up in the classic track, but I'm going to go with Tom Noonan's Fred Decker's Monster Squad.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
One of the great 80s films. A kid's film. It's not really a kid's film. Treats kids like they are when they're that age, when they curse and they think about girls and they're all together, and it's a great, none of the adults ever believe them for the longest time in that movie. And of course we have scary German guy who turns out to be the savior of everyone at the end. It's just a great movie. That movie runs like an hour and 20 minutes. It's like flies through its time. It's really well done. Fred Decker, great director, great writer. That movie kind of put him out of Hollywood though, because it was a huge flop when it came out. But it has some great monster designs all the way through. But Tom Noonan, of course, who played, I think a lot of people know him from Manhunter, the Michael Mann film, when he played, the Hannibal Lecter killer in that and stuff. So he's great. He's really, really great. And that's just a favorite of mine. I think it's a really terrific film.
Oh yeah,
Good
yeah,
pick.
yeah.
And that Frankenstein's very friendly with the children. As you know, if we think back to Frankenstein and children, he doesn't really do all that well with children.
No.
That one's kind of becomes almost their pet and their protector. It's really a fun movie.
That one really does follow through with the idea that the monster itself, that Adam, I'm going to be pedantic about it because I can. Adam is not really evil. He's, fairly innocent, and the only reason he does horrible things is because humans are jerks. And if you're nice to him, he's usually not that bad.
Let's go to Sherman.
This is going to be an unusual pick. I'm going to say Frankenstein Jr. from the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Because of Ted Cassidy, the voice of the Gorn from the Arena episode of Star Trek, and of course Lurch from the Addams Family.
Love. Well, maybe love is a strong word. I enjoy. But tell me some more about that, Sherman. Oh.
So why is he Frankenstein Jr.?
It was a kiddie show. I haven't actually seen that much of it myself, but I was watching a documentary about Ted Cassidy the other day, and they mentioned him, and so I've got to go and do more research on it. But I mean, Ted Cassidy's there. The opening narration for The Incredible Hulk sold me on it anyway. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go do some more reading and watching of that show. So yeah,
I think
I think it's on Boomerang or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. And it was Frankenstein Jr. is a giant robot, and that's always good. So
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Giant robot Frankensteins.
Because why not?
Yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah.
No.
Mine is actually a pretty faithful adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. In fact, the movie was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Movie itself is not great, but Robert De Niro is really great as the creature or the creation in that one. And they strayed away from what's traditionally been the look of Frankenstein in media for the last 75, 80 years before that, and they made him look horrific. Like, he is a frightening movie monster. And just watching the scenes with him, he's great. You can skip most of the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's Richard Brenna. It's or no, not Richard. Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh. He's great. It's riding the coattails, the wave of Coppola's,
the Dracula. There's a lot of classic horror revival going on in the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah, and De Niro really does give a good performance. I wish they'd bulked him up a bit, because to me, I thought he should have looked bigger. But if you're going for a more realistic, he certainly fits the bill. And someone wants to know the bird's opinion.
She only says her name, so I can't get much else out of her.
At least she's not cursing.
Since Mike already took the Monster Squad in this round, I must mention another Monster Squad from about 10 years earlier. A not great Saturday morning series that I'm
wrong, Joe. Fantastic series.
Okay, it is.
When I was at the age to watch it, it was a fantastic series. It was like the cornerstone of Saturday morning viewing was the Monster Squad with the great Fred Grandy.
Yes, Gopher.
Yes,
was a little nerd guy who would the three Universal classic monsters were in the basement of a museum, and he would bring them to life to fight crime at night, and they drove in a van to the crime scene. And Frankenstein, whose name was Frank N. Stein, which is just that's solid gold. I'm actually doing a recap series for this show with our classic track buddy John Drew. But so I have seen all of these episodes like in the last couple of weeks, but it's like laughing. It's like, and in fact, it's created by one of the guys behind the Batman '66 TV show.
Plays very much like that.
It does. It does. My biggest Frankenstein recollection from that series is there's an episode where they all get captured one by one, and there's a slide on the set into a jail cell. Dracula slides down it. The actor, the character of Dracula slides down the thing. Boop, he's okay. Wolfman slides down the thing. He's okay. The guy in the Frankenstein suit, and they captured this on film, appears to die when he slides down this tiny slide, because it's a controlled slide with Dracula and Wolfman. They're like, shoom, down this little 4-foot slide, and now we're okay. But Frankenstein was in this giant, bulky costume, and he comes at it completely unprotected. It's like, whoosh! down the slide, and then he slams into these metal bars that make up the cage. And then they have to then they keep the scene going. They're like, I guess they're like, look, we got 15 minutes to film this thing. We got to go.
We don't have the budget for reshoots.
No. So we've almost killed Frankenstein. Keep going. But yeah, and it's captured on film on, I think, episode 2 of Monster Squad, and it is solid gold. But they missed out on all the merchandising opportunities for that show, and it had laugh-in. It had all the 70s and 60s wacky characters, wacky actors of the time. Oh gosh, Jonathan, Dr. Smith from Lost in Space is on an episode.
Harris, yeah.
Yeah, and that is solid gold. You gotta at the very least check out that one episode because he's great at everything. And so now that we've talked about a Frankenstein actor almost dying, get him in.
I am going to go with another oddball pick. And when I first saw this movie as a kid, it actually terrified me from this one scene. But it is the wonderful 1965 classic Frankenstein Conquers the World, where you have kaiju Frankenstein. The scene I remember is they find like Frankenstein's hand, the monster's hand, and it's still like trying to grip things. And that as a kid, to me, it's like, I don't know what it was about that, but that just freaked me the hell out. And then they managed to regrow the Frankenstein monster, and he just doesn't stop growing. And we get kaiju Frankenstein. It's great. And he beats up a monster. They did a sequel where he beats up another evil giant kaiju Frankenstein. There is just something about seeing this guy. It's like, I love the giant kaiju monsters movies to begin with, but to see a guy who, is like, okay, you get to be Godzilla. Okay, you get to be in a giant turtle. You get this furry bikini outfit. Here you go. Tear down some buildings while wearing this.
Let's go to Beth.
1990 brought us the very best and the very worst Frankenstein movies of all time.
Oh.
The very worst being Frankenstein Unbound, because that is just unwatchable.
Oh, that movie's so bad.
It is. Bad. Great poster, terrible movie.
I mean, okay, so to be honest, this was 1990, and I only watched it because of Jason Patric and Michael Hutchins playing Percy and Byron, or Shelley and Byron, but
Mm-hmm.
You weren't a huge Roger Corman fan at that point?
No, not at that point. But because I was watching worse stuff, because I was watching Frankenhooker.
I deliberately left her for you.
I am a terrible person who loves terrible things. And it is the best, worst movie ever. If you want to see exploding hookers, this is the movie for you. Even if you don't want to see exploding hookers, there's something for every Frankenstein fan. Now, maybe it's not the best Frankenstein monster, but I found this movie because my brother and I used to just wander around Blockbuster, ask your mom. and we would just pick movies based on the box. And when you press the button on the box of Frankenhooker, it asks you if you want to date. And my brother and I said, you know what? I do. Let's find out what this is. And it was so good and so bad. It's up there with like Reanimator movies or down there, depending on your point of view. But it's so campy and it's so cheesy and it's so stupid in all the best ways.
That's great.
This is the second panel I've been on in about a month and a half where we talked about Frankenhooker.
Mm-hmm. Were you on a panel with Nicole?
Yes.
Yeah.
He made Basket Case. Many other
also
amazing
a great
films.
movie.
Yes.
I mean, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in that wonderful bad good category where at the same time you're watching it, you're like going, your brain is going, this is terrible, this is awesome, this is horrible, this is amazing. I mean, just I love it. I love the cheesiness of it. I love how everybody seems to be in on it that's in the movie. And, how do you not love a movie that the plot kicks off because the guy's girlfriend gets run over by a mad lawnmower?
That's good stuff. I love that there is so much. There's so much Frankenstein stuff out there. It's not like there were 3 things and then somebody gave up. Everybody has a Frankenstein thing in every genre and every type of media. But let's go to Mike.
I'm going to go a little more pathos side of Frankenstein and go with one of my very favorite series, 3 seasons on Showtime, Penny Dreadful. And Rory Kinnear, who played his character was John Clare, was the second Frankenstein monster that Frankenstein created because he tore the first one in half. The second one tore the first one in half. He plays the monster. The monster there is not a shambling kind of Frankenstein. He's a very intelligent, very brooding, very lost in the world, goes off to travel as the Frankenstein monster does in the novel, goes off to, the Arctic and goes around and is just, and lost and doesn't know, his place amongst men. Very existential Frankenstein. But Kinnear is such a great actor. And it was such a great series that really didn't get a chance to finish the way it should have. But it was rushed to the end. Showtime decided not to do it, and they kind of hit them midstream, and they didn't get to finish their story. But Kinnear's portrayal is just really, really great and really, really smart. And we actually get to see the story of his character before he becomes the Frankenstein monster, his life before that he starts to remember and going back to his family. And it's just a really heartbreaking and dark. And that show just, I really love that show. It's a great Gothic, masterpiece in my opinion. Three amazing seasons. And then of course they made Penny Dreadful City of Angels, which was horrible. So yeah, we've got those 3 seasons of that show. Really, really good.
This may be a topic for another time. Is anything with the subtitle or the title City of Angels, is any of that good? Is there a good thing called City of Angels?
No.
Nicolas Cage wants a few words with you, Joe.
Oh, I bet he does.
He's probably got more than a few words for you.
Okay, Sherman.
Okay, this is an odd thing from my childhood. I didn't actually see it myself, but I read the Crestwood House book about Frankenstein. And there was this one part of the book that was really fascinating to me. And I found out later on it was actually broadcast on the BBC, I think. It's called Frankenstein, The True Story. And it's closer to the novel. But all I saw was just black and white pictures. But I was fascinated by it because instead of him being this guy with sort of green makeup and bolts in his neck, he was almost like a guy that was a mummy that had been revivified and was only partially unwrapped walking around in the movie. So I was always fascinated by that. And I still haven't seen the movie, but I will eventually, I guess.
Yeah. Shout Factory just recently put out a really nice collector's edition of that with a painted cover by the friend of the track, Mark Maddox, which is really good. The painting and the movie. It was it was actually a 2-night mini series. Tom Baker is in it as as a sea captain. And it's actually really good. It's a really good version.
All right, Sherman, you have your assignment.
Yeah, but do yourself a favor. There's a version on Amazon.
I do.
Do not watch the version on Amazon Prime. It is cut heavily. It is not good. Seek out that Shout Factory. It's beautiful and it's really the extended whole version of the movie, not the cut down version that's on there. It doesn't play very well. So do that for sure.
Yeah. Well, trimming something down from 4 hours to 2 hours never really works well.
Yeah.
So let's go to Noel.
I'm actually kind of impressed that we got this far without mentioning this one. He is the patriarch of a family that lives at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. And of course, Herman Munster was the creation of Dr. Victor Frankenstein. But he is definitely up there with my favorite Frankensteins because Fred Gwynne is such a national treasure. One of the best comedic characters in all of television history. And I mean, every other version they've tried to do, Herman Munster's not nearly as good as he was when Fred Gwynne was in that role.
Somehow, for some reason, the Munsters today is on Hulu now. And that was a latter-day syndicated Munsters sitcom, and it's not good.
No, I watched that when it was brand new.
Yeah.
And no, I quickly abandoned ship and just went back to the classics.
It's not the Munsters today. It was the Munsters 15 years ago, and it was not great. Because Fred Gwynne, you can't do Fred Gwynne. You can't do, and anyone who tries to do Fred Gwynne, anyone who tries to do Herman Munster, they all attempt to do Fred Gwynne, and you can't.
Right. And it's more than just, I mean, he's more than just playing a goofy character. I mean, there's a lot of depth to the way he plays him, as he's a big childish oaf with like super strength. And there's a lot of subtlety to that role that I think gets lost on a lot of people when they watch the Munsters. Yeah.
Yeah, Herman Munster is very much the fathers knows best 50s TV dad, but just a little goofier. And he plays it, fairly straight. He doesn't do anything monstrous. He's just a guy. He just happens to be, a undead corpse stitched back together and brought to life. But aside from that, he's, like every other guy. He brings his lunch pail into work. He digs his graves at the graveyard. He's a good guy.
He loves his wife's pancakes.
Mm-hmm. As do we all, I think.
Everybody loves Lily's pancakes.
Yes.
And
I still want to know how he's a Frankenstein's monster married to a vampire and they have a werewolf son.
What?
That's none of my business.
That's a strange thing to me.
Yeah, a million years later, we're still going to be wondering about that.
Yeah. We don't know what Lily was doing on the side.
That's right. Hey, we don't know whose lower abdomen Dr. Frankenstein used, shall we say.
There's
true.
adoption. You guys have the filthiest
Thank you, Beth.
What kind of people have I fallen into?
We like to keep it on this level up here. And you guys are come on.
I'm just saying, Eddie turned out a lot like Lily, so...
I'm just enjoying the one time I get to take the high ground.
You're going to lop all our limbs off now.
Yeah. That's the high ground. Finally. He wins all the arguments.
And we also have to give the show credit for giving us Rob Zombie's classic hit, Dragula.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the greatest theme songs in the history of television.
Yeah.
100%. Somebody, like maybe last year or it could have been 10 years ago. I don't know time anymore. I think Imagine Dragons has a song with the Munsters music in it, and it is an outrage. I'm an old man screaming at the cloud whenever that comes up on the radio, and it's like, that's the Munsters theme. What are you doing, Imagine Dragons? Even though there was a dragon on the Munsters.
It was Fall Out Boy.
I think the song is called Uma Thurman.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a Fall Out Boy.
Oh, Fall Out Boy. Okay.
Not Imagine Dragons. Now,
Joe, you're an old man
in the world.
And I'm the one with the gray beard.
I attempted briefly to capture Hypnus, and I failed. So good. I wish my daughter's going to love that. She's going to be, so all bands are the same to you now, Dad? Great. He's going to be very excited to hear
Oh, there we go.
that. Yes, that's me now. That is me. I'm the old man yelling at the cloud.
Joe, you're making Deanna bite her tongue.
With the rock and the roll and the young kids with their music. And Fall Out Boy is a Simpsons reference. I know that. Why? What has happened to me? All right. Oh, where were we? I don't know where we were.
Back
I
to you,
believe it
Joe.
was your turn, Joe.
Oh, well, I think it's. Oh, here we go. The one I was going to go with is a. This is one of my. That's a personal favorite. It's when they attempted to put the Frankenstein monster into Marvel Comics. Briefly, in the 70s, when they did everything in Marvel Comics, they attempted to make Frankenstein happen. And the only real revolutionary thing they did was they put him in a fur vest like Sonny Bono. So now I'm making 70s references and seeming even older. Why is this happening? Okay. Now, in DC Comics attempted to do this too, when Grant Morrison, in like out of the last few years or so, tried to make Frankenstein happen. And in my opinion, he needed that it didn't happen. He kept trying to make it happen and it wouldn't happen. Because Frankenstein I don't know that Frankenstein works with other superheroes. Because couldn't they just yank his arms off? Couldn't the Hulk just punch a hole in him? The end? But no. So Frankenstein, I think, needs to be with his universal brethren, and that's it.
Go be with your own kind, Frankenstein.
Yeah.
There was actually an episode of Hulk and the Agents of Smash that had Frankenstein in it too. It was him and I think Blade.
Yeah. Somehow they.
Oh,
put
back in
Blade
the 90s when they,
yeah.
after the whole Midnight Suns thing of the 90s. And Lola says that the problem is they put Frankenstein in front of a green screen and no one could see him.
I can't. Over to Gary.
All right. So I'm going to go with this one because it's partially I love it and partially I'm bragging. Is Bernie Wrightson did an illustrated version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein where he did all the illustrations. And Bernie Wrightson is one of the grandmasters of horror comics and horror art. And I still remember the first time I saw this piece, which was when the when Frankenstein is made the bride and then destroyed it, and the creature grabs him and says, "I will be with you on your wedding night." It's a wonderful, beautiful piece of art. His line work in it is incredible. The creature looks great. The bride looks gruesome. And I have a giant signed print of it, signed by Wrightson, hanging on my wall. And it's just one of my favorite pieces of art. And I'm so glad I was able to meet Bernie, tell him how much I loved it, and get that signed print. And spent way stupid amount of money getting it framed. But if you've never seen it, I mean, look it up on Google. Most of the art is there. It's just beautiful pieces of work. He really you can tell it was a labor of love for him, and it's just gorgeous art. And you get to read the book.
Yeah. This is where we are, right?
Wow.
Sadly, Deanna, Joe is home.
Yes, I'm home right now. I'm super hip. I don't care what my daughter says. Okay. Beth, you're next up.
Well, I was torn between two, but I think talking about The Simpsons has cinched this for me, so that I'm going to talk about Frankenstein.
Again, you
Which
stole my
was-
next one.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Noel. I don't mean
There's
to
a million
say-
Frankensteins out there.
That's
true. There are more. It was Treehouse of Horror. Was it 14?
14.
14.
Nice.
So Professor Frink wins the Nobel Prize and wishes his father could be there to see him. His father has been killed by a shark because he was testing a blood-based sunscreen. His father is brought back to life by the use of Professor Frink's hammer with a screwdriver on the other end, because it makes it so much easier to do science. And his father is played by Jerry Lewis, which of course he has to be. And his father goes on a murderous rampage, and he steals comic book guy's ass, and he's got Sideshow Mel's head, and he rips out Skinner's spine, and he becomes a murderous ghoul and starts shoving brains into his head. And it's not one of the best seasons of The Simpsons, but that is one of the highlights of some of the later Simpsons episodes.
So good.
Yeah, it's easy to debate the quality of the later seasons of The Simpsons, but they always manage to nail Treehouse of Horror, I think.
Even if it's not a great year, there's always at least one really good Treehouse of Horror segment.
Yeah. So back to Mike.
Well, I'm going to go with another one that should be kind of obvious. A movie that I've seen more than 1,000 times in the theater. The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Man.
And the athlete named Rocky, who is the title character of that film, is a not so much a monster. He's kind of the perfect man, big and stupid, and and used for nefarious purposes, I would say, by Dr. Frankenfurter. I'm not sure he had a lot of choice in the matter, but I mean, Susan Sarandon could turn any man at that point, right? So yeah, so it's a great take on the whole thing. Richard O'Brien, of course, very influenced by all of the classic monster movies and even into the 50s sci-fi. So he just kind of threw everything into a pot, stirred it around, and came out with this insane musical that has stuck with us we're still talking about it. It'll still be playing this Halloween at different theaters, hopefully somewhere, at least a drive-in or something. It's got to be playing. We can't just have a year where we don't have Rocky Horror at Halloween.
No.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I've seen it over 1,000 times. I played Riff Raff in my local cast when I was a kid, like a teenager. So it's been a long, strange trip with Rocky Horror. But yeah, exactly. It's a great take on the Frankenstein monster. Like I said, for a totally different reason.
Yeah.
And
if I'm not,
Magenta when I was a kid,
I can see that. And if I'm not mistaken, at least up until COVID happened, there was a theater in Germany that has been playing Rocky Horror since it came out. They keep running it.
That works.
It used to be my first date. Used to be my first date movie. I figured if I could take a girl to Rocky Horror and take her into that whole situation, and she could handle that, and she enjoyed it, then I knew she could handle me. So, and my personality. So she'd have to laugh along, and a lot of girls didn't make it through that test. But luckily, almost 19 years later, there's one that stuck with me. So, yeah, she got it. So,
how many times has your
Did any of them hiss?
I don't know how many times my wife has seen it. At least 40 or 50. She's seen it at least 40 or 50 times with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure. I think she said she'd seen it in high school when she was young or whatever. But I mean, when it was playing here in Pensacola regularly, it played every Friday and Saturday night. And literally for, I think, 3 years, I didn't miss it on a Friday or Saturday night. I was there every week. So yeah, it was a big part of my teenage years. And I continue to host it almost every Halloween, although I don't think I'll get to host it this year. But the local rock club, we do it. We host it every year. And so it's just one of those, I think it's brilliant. I really love it. And of course, the Frankenstein monster story is Frankenstein and monster relationship is kind of the center of that film. So yeah, it's a really fun adaptation.
At some point in your geeky and or nerdy life, you gotta go to a live screening of Rocky Horror just to see the whole experience.
It's a rite of passage.
Yeah, watching it at home or in a theater is fine. It's great, but because the movie's good, but seeing the production from the audience, it's solid gold.
Yeah, I saw it in 1988. I went to the first Southern Rocky Horror, and only, as far as I know, Southern Rocky Horror Convention was in Orlando. Sal Piro came down from New York City and kind of led the audience participation. And it was in a theater that sat, I think, 1,000 people. It was a huge theater in Orlando. We had a live cast, and everybody in there was completely into it, all in sync doing the lines. So that's like one of those experiences you never get back. I think I've seen it now in 10 states now. I've seen Rocky Horror. So
Neat.
Traveled all around.
That's another thing we could do a whole hour on, but and we'll get to it. We've only got the entirety of all sci-fi things to cover here on the Classics Track. We're working on it. Sherman.
This one, my choice is going to be the Frankenstein monster from the Groovy Ghoulies. I choose this only because of its filmation pedigree. I only saw it in reruns because I was too young when it first came out. But I don't know what the deal was with Frankenstein. He didn't have any bolts in his neck, didn't have any stitches on his head. He was just sort of this big, green, goofy-looking guy. And I never understood that, but I guess there were licensing issues, I figured later on. So that would be mine.
Yeah.
And Noel.
All right, Noel, bring us home.
All right, so there's a channel out there called MTV, and on MTV, they one time played videos, and everybody remembers back in the 80s, there was this great big cinematic music video that had a horror theme to it, and I'm not talking about Thriller, I'm talking about Huey Lewis and the News, Doing It All for My Baby. Which is one of the best music videos that was ever produced. And it's like 8 minutes long. The band is driving along. They get a flat tire while they're jacking up the car. The car falls on Huey Lewis. The rest of the band just gives up on him and they walk away. Eventually, they're all murdered and they wind up in the home of the mad Victor Frankenstein doctor, who's played again by Huey Lewis, who is animating first the bride. The bride comes first in this version, and then later the actual creature gets built as well. And it's hilarious. It's funny. It's so well directed. There's so many little details. The hunchback playing the organ to the little trademark riff in the song. Everything about it is just perfect. And it's every time I think of Frankenstein, that's one of the first things I go to.
Have I blocked this from my memory? I have no recollection of this.
It's on YouTube. You can go back and watch it anytime.
That must have been.
MTV
hasn't played music videos since the 1950s.
I think it was 87. Was
yeah,
that
I was way
video?
too young to be doing drugs then, so I don't know why I don't remember this.
Yeah, Huey Lewis just stood astride the music world like a colossus at that time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just they were one of the top bands, and I remember that video. And yeah, it's everything Noel described. It's so 80s.
Best.
Yeah.
The absolute best. I was gonna read the lyrics to Alice Cooper's "Feed My Frankenstein," but we're all out of time.
We're not worthy.
I'm doing it anyway.
There we go.
Let's
There's the OG.
And your winter group while we're at it too.
Yeah.
We owe it all.
Yes.
Oh,
Dang it! How did we miss the Edgar Winter song? Ah,
It's on my list.
yeah.
Well, I've got all the lyrics.
How many albino band leaders are there?
exactly. I gotta say though, I don't know how how novel accurate the "Feed My Frankenstein" lyrics are, because it says, "I'm a hungry man, but I don't want pizza. I'll blow down your house, and then I'm going to eat you. What?
He's covering all his monster
Frankenstein's
bases.
Big Bad Wolf.
Yeah.
You know, was cocaine big in the 70s, or did that hold off till the 80s?
No, I think Alice Cooper was cocaine, but no, Alice Cooper is a genius. But let's see. Meet my. Oh, I can't say that. Oh, okay. I'm gonna say no. I'm not. Yeah, Google the lyrics. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Colorful descriptions of things, parts. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for spending some time with us on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track. Let's go around the horn and go around the interwebs, and everybody tell us where you can be found if you wish to be. Gary Mitchell.
You can find me here on the Classics Track with this guy right here. Hey, Joe.
It's me.
No, don't leave me hanging, Joe.
I'll try. Boom.
Yeah.
Got it.
And you can find me here on the Twitter. You can occasionally find me on other podcasts, and yeah. My plugging skills are rusty, apparently.
We had to plug ourselves like 83 times over one weekend, and now we're got to get back up to speed. We're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And Beth.
Despite what it says right there, my name is Beth Van Dusen, and you can find me on the Execute Chapter 66 podcast on the Needless Things, which I guess is now Needless Things Network, but needlessthingspodcast.com.
And you're at the end of every episode now.
Yes.
I am now apparently the end voice of Needless Things. Who knew?
It's cool. And Mike.
Well, of course, you can always go to pensacon.com. It's at the end of February next year. We're going to have COVID gone by then. We're all going to have a good time. Keep your fingers crossed. We have a great lineup. Anthony Michael Hall, Donald Logue, just a lot of great people coming. Go check out the whole guest list. We got a lot more to add and keep coming on that. And for Nightmare Theater, if you're not living in one of the areas where we are seen on television, which is most of Florida and Knoxville and Chattanooga and Tennessee, then you can check us out on YouTube at WSRE's YouTube channel. That's the PBS station here in Pensacola where we originate from. Our shows, 2 seasons worth, are up on there. We have a brand new Halloween special. This will be the first year that it airs simultaneously on all of our stations, which is awesome. It's going to air on Halloween night everywhere that we are syndicated, and we'll be online on YouTube shortly after that. And of course, you can always search for Nightmare Theater on Facebook and like us there and follow us and see what we're doing.
And Sherman.
I can be found under Sherman Burris on Facebook, but I can be found under Nerdburger358 on Instagram, Pinterest, and some other stuff I can't remember at the moment. But that's where you just look for Nerdburger358.
And Noel.
You can go to my website if you want to read some content that's up to 23 years old at dorkdroppings.com. Don't update it often, but there's lots and lots of archives. Or you can listen to me on a monthly, and actually lately a semi-monthly basis, on the Audible Interlude podcast. If you're into G.I. Joe at all, myself and the Fan Troublemaker and Christian Allen do a really great show about the wonderful world of G.I. Joe, and that's also on the Needless Things Network.
And if you guys didn't get, and there goes Noel. Always leave them laughing. That's you gotta know when to get
Knowing
out
is
of here.
the battle, the other half is knowing when to leave.
Boom, exactly. And much like Frankenstein, he has been revived. That's good. You can find us on the Facebooks at facebook.com/group/American Sci-Fi Classics. We do this every week. And if you're looking for us on YouTube, we're here. You're already here. Right here. Here's where you need to stay. Don't look at any other YouTube videos, just ours. Just ours. But thank you guys again for coming and hanging out with us for a little while. This is the best thing that, I mean, the real world is stupid. Let's just do this all the time. Thank you guys very, very much. We will see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Fire bad.